You're listening to the See the Unseen podcast, where our number one focus is creating a little visibility for people who deserve a whole lot of spotlight. I'm your host, Melissa Georgioff, and I'm here to share some amazing stories that can transform and inspire lives. So get ready to take those blinders off and see the unseen. Today we have Bill Tortorella on the podcast. I'm so excited to have him on. Bill won an international art contest with over 250,000 contestants for WNBC's Broadway musical Jesus Christ Superstar by Andrew Lloyd Webber. In 1994, though, while at a trade show in Tucson, Arizona, he became very ill along with a lot of other people. And during this time, he experienced a near-death event. This experience significantly influenced his life and motivated him to write a book. And he's doing all kinds of things, documentaries and all kinds of work, in order to share his story with others to make a positive change in the world. I am so excited to have Bill on my podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Bill.
Thank you for having me, Melissa. It's nice to be here.
Yes, so here's how this all kind of happened. I started listening to these near-death experiences, which number one, I had never even known this was a thing. And I was doing a lot of work just on my own spiritual walk and my own walk with God. And I kept wanting to know more about death, quite frankly, like what happens when we die? And I started really like watching these podcasts, and I saw your podcast with the guy, I forget what his name is, but it was basically I listened to your story, and it was like so good. And it's so like, I was like, I believe everything this guy's telling me on this podcast. And I thought, I got to have you on this podcast. So that's really where it came from. So let's tell the listeners, tell them a little bit about you and where you grew up, where you're from, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, my name is Bill Tortorella. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York in the early 50s. And my mom and dad had my mom owned a bar and grill across the street from Ebbets Field where the Brooklyn Dodgers used to play. And my dad was president of one of the Teamsters unions, locals. He was president 804, which was the local of United Parcel of today. So actually that was the beginning of that. He brought them in there. Through high school, I went into art. I was always interested in art and becoming an artist. So that's what I wanted to do. But, life has little curves and changes. So what happened in high school, I'll tell you, I'll start out with just a little story because it all interlinks with the full story. At the end of the last semester, we had a project to do, and it was a storyboard project for like if you were making up a commercial or a movie where you had to tell a story through pictures. So I had to paint, I think it was 17 panels. So what happened was my brother had passed away when I was only 16 years old. And at that time, I got real close to Jesus. I was close to God because I was young. My brother was a lot older than me. He was 30. He was 31, and he came down with cancer, and they told him they had 4 months to live. So it hit me pretty hard because my brother was he was actually there more than my father was at the time. My father was always busy out on conventions, doing things like that. And he brought me up. He's the one that brought me to the ball games when I was a kid. He taught me how to play ball and everything. So that experience, that came back to me when I was finishing high school a couple of years later. And I did this story. The teacher asked me what Mr. Hollingsworth asked me, what are you going to do? I says, well, I think I'm going to do the greatest story ever told. And I decided to do the story of Jesus. So I started from the manger scene on one panel all the way up to 17 panels later, the crucifixion. And that turned out to be wonderful. I got a little bit of an award for that. But was how things interlink. After I graduated, I was already working now in Manhattan. I was working for a big advertising agency called Benton and Bowles. It was actually, I actually worked for Triad Studios, but we were a sublet company that worked for them directly. And I was doing the ads for CoverGirl and everything. So I used to drive into Manhattan every day. And on the radio, I hear the talk on the NBC radio saying that the Andrew Lloyd Webber Broadway production is going to be opening in about 6 months from that time. And they said it was Jesus Christ Superstar. And I'm rolling my head. They're saying they're putting a contest together. So that's how that art contest came aboard. I just heard it right on the radio. That night I went home. I bought 2 4-by-8-foot plywood boards at the lumber yard, 3 hinges. I came home. I said I was going to do something different. So I did a beautiful picture of Jesus standing about 7 foot tall with his arms spread out. In the background, it had a little town. The town was burning and hundreds and hundreds of people were coming down the mountain. And as they got bigger, they got about 3 foot tall on the bottom. He's 7 foot tall. And they're reaching up to him with their canes and crosses and torches and everything, and reaching up for God's love as their town is, burning. So when it got I brought it to NBC about a month and a half later when I was finished with it. And they said, well, I said, where do you want me to put this? I was going to lay it up on the wall. She said, no, I want that right in the middle of the room. So it was in the middle of a big ballroom. So I got there. There was, all these cards and paintings on canvas and different things that people were making up. And it was a gigantic art contest. It was actually international. So there was 250,000 people. Anyway, 2.5 months later, I get a call saying I won first place for the show. And I was so excited. It was brilliant. But that's just to show you how things happen. I mean, I just finished the story basically of Jesus in high school. And then this thing came over the radio and everything goes in sequence, sort of like that. So I'll just speed on a little bit forward now. It's 1973 now. I get married. My wife and I at the time, God rest her soul, we decided to move to Miami. Now, from New York, we both worked in New York. At those times, there was no computer. We're both young, no computers, no way of doing research on things. There was a little bit of a way of doing research, but being young, and I call those the young and dumb years in life, we didn't research as much. Mm-hmm. But when we got down there to Miami, she got a job right away. It was great because she was a legal secretary. So she worked for a great firm there was no work in my field in Miami. I finally went to the Miami Herald newspaper and they said, Bill, if you want to be in this industry, you got to go to New York or Chicago, because they jobbed all their advertising out in Miami. The only thing you could find down there was these little print shops that were doing ads for condos and things like that. So at that time, this is actually in my book. I physically had to change and do something. So I became a paramedic for Miami.
So you went from advertising to being a paramedic.
From advertising to being a paramedic. I was still doing my paintings and stuff on the side for some art galleries and things like that. And that's basically what it was. They sent us to school and we worked on the unit. So as we were going to school, we worked as an attendant alongside the 2 paramedics, the driver and the paramedic in the back. And you actually got more training on the job than you learned in school. But I went to Mount Sinai Medical School. Okay, so now we're going to go fast forward. Because the reason why I brought up those stories is because they sort of come back in my book somewhat. We're going to fast forward to when I had my near-death experience. Now, I'm no longer a paramedic. I did that. It was about 1980. I remember I moved down there in 1973. It was about 1980 when I went into my own business and I opened a business. I was basically selling jewelry and costume jewelry, nice fashion jewelry for ladies and a lot of different watches and things like that. And I did about, 38, 42 shows a year. I did trade shows all over the country. So it kept me traveling. And I went to the Far East. I went to this is back in the 80s now. I went to China, I went to Hong Kong and Thailand and those things like that. There's an amazing story about in the book. One time, my ex-wife and I, we were in Thailand. We got actually kidnapped there. So it was a horrifying story. We're lucky we came out with our lives. It was basically a miracle. That was one of the 3 miracles for myself that I explained in the book, but that was one of them. That was it's incredibly interesting. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so I'm working that field for a good long time, and it's 1994 now. I'm in Tucson, Arizona. So this is the start of the NDE. I'm about to tell you one of the most profound NDE stories, I believe, out there right now, because it's very detailed. And what happened is we go to this big show. It's a gem and lapidary show out in Tucson. I think there's hundreds of thousands of people that come to this event, because what they do is people come from all over the world. And you wouldn't believe that Tucson, Arizona would hold a show like this, but the whole city becomes a show. Not only the convention center was filled, all the major hotels have ballrooms in them. Every ballroom in every hotel is filled with vendors. They bring up diamonds, they bring up rough cut stones. People are selling jewelry. I mean, it's a massive, massive show. And it's in February, so it's that cold and flu season going around. But we got people coming from South America, Africa, Asia, Europe, all over the world. And from the first day we got there, I remember setting up. It took us 2 days to set up our booth because we had a real big booth. And we're setting up, and I'm hearing people coughing, as I walk around and doing my work and stuff like that. I'm hearing quite a few people coughing and looking like they're not feeling too well. It came, I think it was the 3rd day. The lady across from me in the booth she's been sick since day 1. She's in the middle of working and she just falls to the floor. So here it is in 1994 now. It's, I started being a paramedic in 73. So those paramedic skills kicked in and I went running over to her. So I picked her head up, sort of put it in my lap. She felt so hot, like she was burning up. I didn't have a thermometer or anything, but she was just so heated and dehydrated looking. It was tough. So I just wanted to make sure she had an airway and she was breathing properly. So I kept her airway good, and then the paramedics came and they took over. It wasn't until that night, and I don't think it was because I got that close to her. I think there were so many people sick around, I might have caught it a couple of days before, because it usually takes 2-3 days for something to incubate. And it was that catchy, basically. That night, I started to get so sick. I've had the flu before, like many people have, Melissa. And I've had it bad. I've had one bad flu when I was very young that I thought next to killed me. It was so bad. It was terrible. But this flu, I started burning. I didn't have a temperature. I didn't have a thermometer. My wife came to all these shows with me, but she was back at home now in her first trimester. She was pregnant. I had people at the show with me working, but I wasn't with my wife wasn't with me on this particular trip. My throat swelled up to about that big. You know how you get swollen glands? Mm-hmm. Well, I got swollen glands. I never seen anything like this. They were the size of my jawbone. That's how far they were out from my neck. So it was that bad. I had trouble breathing. And I didn't know at the same time I had a medical condition that I never knew about. I used to wake up once in a while like choking, mm-hmm. like you're almost choking because you can't get the air in. And I didn't know I had this thing called sleep apnea. In 1994, I'd never even heard of it before. But apparently I had that too, because that's what I was tested for later on. And I still to this day I have to sleep with that machine. Otherwise,
yeah, I'm actually going to get tested for sleep apnea because I snore all the time now.
You should do it. It's great because you'll get a decent night's sleep for a change, especially if you wake up during the times.
Sure.
Sleep apnea will just get you up. And what happened was that night, I got through that night. I was sick as a dog. I remember going down to my booth the next morning. I think I had 3 people working with me there. And they took one look at me and they said, Bill, you got to go. I didn't even say hello to them. They just looked at me. So I must have looked all pale and, very bad. And I get in a taxi and I go over to the hospital. The hospital was so busy when I walked in the hospital room, emergency room. So they had a guy walking around with a thing in his hand. He's basically writing people's names down. And I'm wondering how long this is going to be taken to be seen, because it's basically, it felt like there was 100 people in the emergency waiting area,
That's typical for emergency rooms these days.
And this one, because it was running around the city, whatever this was, they didn't know if it was bacterial, they didn't know if it was viral, they didn't know anything about it, because it just came on and it came on quick there. So they asked if people want to go to different medical centers. So first thing I did is I just raised my hand. I said, I'd like to go, so went over to one of the medical centers. And when I got in, they put me right on the gurney. They took me back and they hooked me up with IV solution. First of all, they told me that I looked dehydrated, but then they test you for it. They tested me for my oxygen levels were very, very low. So they had me on oxygen the whole day. The whole day they got me on about 3 big bags of fluid going through. And as they were coming around once in a while, they were injecting. So the first time they was injecting something, because I used to do this. So I said, well, what are you putting in she said, the doctor said, he came over and said, we're putting in antibiotics. I says, oh, so I thought it might be the flu. He said, we don't know what it is. They didn't know what this was. That's what it was. It happened fast, and it happened there in Tucson. Anyway, now medical centers close. They're businesses, so they close. About 7 o'clock comes and says, we're closing now. You're plenty hydrated. They told me your oxygen levels are back up. Your fever's a little lower. They gave me a bottle of pills, which was an antibiotic, and they gave me an inhaler. And they said to me, Bill, if you wake up tomorrow and you feel the same way that you did when you came in here, they said, get yourself in the hospital. So I basically went back to the hotel room that night. I laid down. I was so uncomfortable. I remember I waited until about 11 or 12 o'clock at night, because they said I had enough antibiotic in me till that time. Mm-hmm. And I took the pill, and I desperately wanted to go to sleep by this time but I didn't want to miss that antibiotic. I took the pill. I took a couple of shots of the inhaler, and I went off. And that night turned into a night of light and love. It was the most beautiful experience I've ever had in my lifetime. I physically remember seeing myself leave my body. The way I left my body was actually through my eyes. They say your eyes are the windows to the soul. Well, I thoroughly believe in that, even though nowadays they talk about that pineal gland. That's supposed to be the third eye. So I don't know. But for me, it looked like I was leaving through my eyes. I could see myself leaving. My whole consciousness was in this beautiful, glowing green mist. It was like the color of life, like the color. If springtime, when the ferns come out in the mountains and everything, and it's got that bright, bright green. And then take that color and magnify it 100 times, and that's what I'm in. I'm in this magnificent, glowing mist, and I'm feeling wonderful. I'm no longer part. And I'm totally detached at this time. Totally detachment. I'm looking down at my body. I still recognize it at this point. At this point, I still recognize my body, but I don't physically care. I feel
so you
light.
Can see your body.
Yes.
Do you feel like you're on a dream? What do you say to the people that think maybe you were dreaming?
It's no dream. You physically detach. And When I'm looking down at myself, I remember watching the body. And when I said, because I could hear myself speaking, when I said, that body's dead, I remember saying dead. Although I'm going to tell you something else a little later, is we never die. We never die. Our souls go on for eternity. But I looked at myself and I said, that body's dead. When I said that, the whole room lit up from behind. Now I'm watching down, like I'm floating still in the room, like under the ceiling. I remember this part so clear because everything lit up. I no longer saw my body. I no longer remembered my body. This light turned me, physically turned me. I remember this beautiful opening, which I call in my book. I have a book out called The Ninth Level of Enlightenment, The Wisdom of the Light. I remember turning, and I call it the gateway, and it drew me right into this beautiful tunnel. I'm in this tunnel now. I'm physically feeling nothing but love. And this love is building and building like a love I've never felt before. There is no love like this in the world. Your consciousness expands so far. Your knowledge is tremendous because we only use about 6 or 7% of our minds here on Earth. But now I'm in the tunnel and now I start to move. And I'm moving. These beautiful colors are all around me. And I'm moving faster and faster. And the faster I moved, the more love I felt, the more protected I felt. It was like I'm being cradled by something or someone. And I'm moving, I'm feeling like I'm moving at the speed of light. That's how fast I was moving. But you don't feel no wind. You just see everything. The colors are whizzing by me and through me. And I'll never forget this next part. Because I remember, I think I'm flying through the cosmos. It's magnificent. You know, with nebulas and things. It's beautiful. But I remember my destination, the stop. When I arrived, I physically remember saying out loud now, Melissa, I'm home. I'm finally home. It was like me leaning over like that, saying it just like that. Thank God I'm home. And I said that over and over again. And there were spirits around me in different forms of color, more like beams of light. And I recognized these spirits. So we travel. I'm going to explain something in detail to you. We travel with family and friends. I recognize these spirits. The beauty of it is that it's your spirit circle, I call it, in my book. There's people out there that speak about other types of gatherings. But then all of a sudden, I could hear and understand so much of what's going on. And it's felt like I'm being welcomed. Now, the beauty about it is I hear this soft voice in my ear say, yes, Bill, you're home in the light of God. And I'm a little bit in shock right now because this is the first physical voice I hear in my mind that's directly speaking to me and not to others. Here in the light of God, my name is Antonio. I'm one of your guardians. I'm responsible for bringing you home. I said, I remember saying, you were with me? I didn't know anybody was with me. But remember I said earlier when I felt I was cradled? She says, when she told me she's my guardian, she's responsible for bringing me home. It was like the hairs on my arms still stand up when I talk about it now. It was so beautiful. And that feeling of being home, knowing you've been there before and knowing you'll be back someday, that's just wonderful. The feeling of love is incomprehensible. You cannot explain it here. The earthly feeling and the heavenly feeling of love is different things completely. It's about 1,000 times more.
That's what I always hear. I hear when I listen to these near-death experiences, everyone says similar things, is that there's this love that you just can't explain. And they never want to go back. Like I heard this one guy talking about how he had all these grandchildren and he just was so happy in life and everything. And he didn't want to come back. Like he loved where he was in heaven.
That's because in most of it, you don't remember this. I'll tell you what happens, actually. What happened at that point, Antonia said to me, you have two other guardians. You have two other guardians. You have Peter and Oren. And all of a sudden, a light comes towards me. And it's a magnificent glow. And I'm feeling like I know. And I hear my brother's voice. Now, I don't know if it's them that want me to recognize him as my brother. He's my brother. But when I had the embrace, it felt like my brother. It felt like it was my actual brother, Peter, that died. I was 16 years old. Now I'm 42 at this show. I mean, now I'm 72, but then I was 42. I was doing this show.
You don't look a day over 42.
Oh, yeah.
You look great.
Thank you. But Peter said in the midst of that, it was like a total embrace, a glow of embrace. He said, we have to go now. And now he's taken me to something called a life review. I didn't know what a life review was.
I never heard of this until recent, but everybody who has this near-death experience, not everybody, but a lot of them have this life review. So tell us about your life review.
You go through a life review. Everybody, it's part of the experience. When you die, they show you all the good you've ever done in life. And they show you all the bad you've ever done. And it's almost like wait till this part was magnificent. It's almost like a flickering screen. Like if you ever remember, you're looking at a computer moving so fast. But if you remember the old movies, and sometimes when the movie reels would end, you're too young for that one. You might not remember that. But there used to be a gigantic, fast flickering. And
right.
It felt like the difference was we were in the flickering screen. And the beautiful thing is all the things they showed me, they were part of now with me. So Peter and Antonia was part of with me watching my life. And they start off when I was young, when I was a little boy. My mom owned the bar, like I said, and she did okay for us. So we weren't rich, but she had a decent little business, and she used to give me some extra money sometimes to bring my friends, because my friends, a lot of them couldn't afford it. So I brought a couple of friends at a time. Sometimes we went to the baseball game, went to Coney Island. In New York, you got all these things you could do and get around when you're kids, I mean, I was 8 years old on the subways. We were going all over the place. But people don't do that today because they can't. And it's a shame. But that's going to change too. I'll tell you about that later. So what happens is they show me these good things I did all the way up to because they show you good after good after good, and you're just glowing inside. You're feeling this glow. You're feeling wonderful. You're feeling like you're part of this. It's like you're watching yourself, but you're actually feeling like you're in yourself at the time. It's the only time you feel yourself in body form. So you physically feel yourself at the time. They bring me up to the time when I was a paramedic. And I'll never forget this because they showed it to me so clear exactly how it happened. They show myself and my partner picking up our unit downtown Miami. And we're checking out the unit. I'm inside checking out the unit because I was the guy in the back. I'm making sure all the supplies were there for the 24-hour shift. We're on our way up to our stations in North Miami Beach. We're on I-95. That's the big main highway going north and south in Florida. And we're on I-95 and about 95th Street. A call comes over the radio. And it comes over 317. There's a car accident, that means, or some kind of accident on the highway. And it's on 135th Street. By the time they finish, we're on about 110th Street. I grabbed the mic because they were calling the other unit from our station, and that was still about 12 minutes away from where we were. I say, we'll be on this in less than 60 seconds, not 60 minutes, 60 seconds. And they said, all right, they called off the other unit, and they said F-67's taking it. So we get on the scene. There's a boy. It just was called in. We were so lucky we were so close. It was amazing. This story is amazing. A boy's running around, there's blood on his face a little bit. So I picked up the medic bag, and I run out, and Danny's running alongside me, and he's yelling, my sister, like this. And Danny and I take a look, we go, and oh my gosh, her head is through the windshield. You know, these were the days basically people didn't wear seatbelts in the early 70s, the 60s, and stuff like that. Seatbelts came in real heavy in the 80s and things, but not in those times.
Oh, I know. I remember my dad used to not make us wear the seatbelts. We would slide. He would put armor on the seats. We'd slide one way and slide the other way. Yeah. But go ahead.
Yeah, so he's yelling my system. I said, when we took a look at it, we had assessed it. We had a couple of seconds. We said we could wait for the fire truck to come with the cutters to cut out the windshield around her head. I said, that's going to take 15 minutes. She'll die. She's going to bleed out. So he looked at me. I looked at him. I said, let's just get her off. And I ran outside on the hood of the car. And I remember helping the top part of her head inside because I had to take it off the glass, you know. And then he took and holding her neck and her head. So he's holding her like this when I got around to the side. Then I picked her whole body up, and he inched his way off the seat. When he inched his way off the seat, because he got sort of underneath her, I was able to pick her body up, was a good position to be in, and I put her right on the stretcher. Now we run her over to the unit. The young brother, is running alongside of us. So I said, hop here in the back with me. There's an extra seat back there. So he hops in the back. He's looking out the back window because he's afraid to look at his sister. We're moving so fast now because we're only 2 miles away from Parkway General Hospital. That's on 167th Street and North Miami Beach. We're on 135th Street. So it's really close. It's a couple miles. And Danny's flying. I'm standing up. I got myself wedged into, got my feet under the seats, and I'm holding the top part of her head down with the gauze pads. I just have a bunch of gauze pads in my hand. And as soon as we got there, well, no, something big happened right before we got there. Her body starts to seize. So you gotta understand, she's completely out cold, but her body and nerve reactions are alive. They're all there. And the body seizing. I don't know if you've ever seen anybody have a seizure, but it's really frantic. The body just shakes and jumps, and I can't hold her. So while we're driving, he's driving, her body seizing, and I got my hand under her neck and my other hand on her head. So I turn. This is the part I want your audience to know, because this is what you see on the other side. I turn and scream at this. I scream at the brother. I said, God help me. I remember saying, God help me. When I said, God help me, I saw Peter's hand come in with mine on top of that gauze pad. And it was amazing. In my life review, I saw that. Not when it actually happened, but I saw that in my life review. So we got her to the hospital. They took her right off into operating. That whole day, I could do nothing but think about her. And people, the guys I worked with, the whole unit place said, Bill, don't bring your home. Don't bring your work home with you. They used to tell me that all the time. You know, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I didn't even know if she was 18. She might have been 17 years old. She was a young girl. I felt bad, you know. So next morning, we're getting ready to go back. I wake my partner up an hour and a half early. I say, Danny, come on, let's go. We got to go back. Because once in a while, we get a couple hours sleep in between calls. She says, it's time. I say, yeah, we got to get the unit ready to go back. So I said, well, I got him in the unit. I said, we got to go to Parkway in general. He looked at me like I had 3 heads. He looked at me. He was a little angry with me. He said, Bill, she's dead. She's dead, Bill. I said, Danny, and I never did this before. I was doing this job for years now. I've never asked to go back to the hospital to see the patient because that didn't do. Because in a lot of cases, when it's that bad, 90% of the time it goes to the wrong side. But this time I had a feeling in me that I had to go. And we went to Parkway because it was about 6 miles out of the way, you know, that way going north, and about 6 miles more coming back out of the way. Then we had to drive downtown still. But we had plenty of time. So we get to Parkway. We run in the emergency room, and I think the nurse's name was Becky. We knew all the nurses in all the hospitals. So, you know, because we talk to them every time we bring people in. I said, Becky, what happened to that young girl we brought in yesterday? She leans over to me, Melissa, and she said, you want to meet her? I had chills all over my body. I could never forget that part because it was beautiful. I mean, she took us up to the room, and now the girl's sitting up in bed, eating a little thing of Jello. She's got bandaged on her head up to here, but I noticed her face. I said, "Thank God," because all I saw was blood all over her face. I said, "Thank God, her face. There's no big, there's no big lacerations on her face. She just got little scratches, and the thing started in her hairline over here." Me and Danny look at each other. We can't understand this because we thought that was a skull fracture. We thought that glass was embedded in her skull. The glass never went in her skull. She was the luckiest person in the world. She was basically scalped, but you can't tell because of I don't want to get graphic, but you can't tell when you're looking and there's that much blood. So you couldn't tell if it was a fracture of the skull or not. But we thought it was. That's what we thought. That was our first thing. And like I said, it was massive, all the blood. And the brother's sleeping. The mother and father are looking at us like we're two lunatics because we're jumping up and down, me and Danny. The brother hears us. He wakes up. He looks at me. He said, "These are the guys that saved your life," he says to his sister. And then the whole room was ecstatic. So it was a really good feeling.
Wow.
So
What
these
a
are the kind of
miracle.
things they show you on the good side.
Okay, so you saw all of this in your
I saw
near-death
all this in
experience,
my life review. Yes.
in your life review. Okay.
Yes. All of it. And then they switch it on you. And they don't tell you they're switching on you. They just switch it on you. And all of a sudden you start out again. It started out when I was a kid. Now they're showing you all the bad things you've done in life. And they show you, and you're not feeling too good about some of these things. No, I feel in my heart, I've never done anything really that bad. But we don't know. We don't know how much we caused. We don't know trauma that we cause people and, things like that. And the difference over there is you feel all that trauma you caused, all of it. So the important thing here that people have to understand is that you get to feel their emotion, is what I say. So you feel the other side of the coin, the other side of the person's emotion. So they take me through a whole bunch of, we all do stupid things when we're teenagers and things like that. But
you got to feel how you might have made somebody else feel during that time.
Oh, you feel it. And it's building and building now. Now it just take you to the last part of that part of the life review. At the end of this, they show me this scene when I was about, 27 or something years old. They show me the part where I left my first wife and my little boy was only before he was 3 years old. And I started feeling now, I felt the pain. This is the thing. You become their pain. You physically become the pain. And then I remember saying after I finished watching that and feeling their pain, I couldn't believe that I caused this harm on people. We don't realize it, especially when you're younger. I did anyway. A lot of people do. A lot of people are more selfish and stuff like that when they're younger. That's one of the things that heavily changed in my life after my life review. But I remember now screaming and yelling in my life review, "God, forgive me. Please, God, forgive me." And soon as I said, "Forgive me, God," all the grain is dropped. And now we're standing back in spirit form. We're no longer in body form. We're in full spirit form. And I remember Antonia looking at me. You could feel people looking at you. You could talk to them. You could talk to her. I could talk to Peter and Antonia at the same time. Everything's done with telepathy. Everybody knows what's in everybody's mind, and we're all connected. This is the beauty of the other side. We're all physically connected through an energy that's so magnificent. And this energy is love, what it is. That Antonia says to me, "Bill, look at yourself. And I looked down at myself, Al, and I remember looking down at myself just like as if you were looking down at a body. And now I'm this beautiful beam. I turned into that same color, that glowing green, but now I'm a beautiful beam of energy. I look just like them. I'm all part of that. Now I'm fully part of God's love. I feel everything around me. And Antonio Peter said, I don't remember exactly who, Oren's coming. When my third guardian appeared to me, I knew this guardian because he's been with me my whole life. You know how they say you have an angel on your shoulder sometimes?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Oren was my angel or my guardian of intuition. Oren was the thing in my mind my whole life. Now I know he was a spirit in my mind my whole life, leading me down the right path. Because I used to get jolted sometimes. I still do today. I get jolted when I feel like I'm doing something the wrong way. That don't do it part comes into me so strong, like it's slamming me in the head. It's so strong, Melissa.
It's a conviction.
It's real. And you feel it. And the tuition is different than a thought. An intuition is different than a thought. Your intuition is a almost physically feeling of it, and it happens over and over again. If people are, if they don't consider that, it's not the path to be on. So that means you should follow your intuitions when you know they're on the positive path, because our spirits physically grow through a positive length of choices we do throughout our whole lifetime. So that's how our spirits actually build. So we build and glow, and that's why we're here on earth. We're here to feel. We're here to learn, and our spirits basically glow. And what happens is the glow gets brighter and brighter until we might turn into the angels I'm about to tell you about in the last part.
So, Bill, let me pause you there. I want to ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
I assume you were a Christian
Yes.
because you were painting Jesus pictures.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I guess, how did this
I'm still Christian.
strengthen your faith too?
I'm still Christian.
Okay.
This is what we go through. But there's a couple of things that are different. I'm a Christian. I don't believe in reincarnation. I believe in incarnation. Like, I believe we travel along with our spirit family, and we do this over and over again, and it's our choice to come in. Even though we beg to stay there when we finally get back, I begged at the end. You're going to hear me at the end. I'm going to do that part at the end, but I begged to stay there. I wanted to stay. I was home. I was finally home. But Oren, I got to get to this next part because it's important. So he says we're going to another level now. I didn't know what he's bringing me to there. He brings me to a place. It looks like a crystal theater. It's magnificent. The crystals are reflecting the beautiful universe, and I'm seeing we're part of the light of the universe. We're part of the physical energy, but with more knowledge and wisdom than you could ever imagine. That's exactly how I can put it to you. So we're part of this great energy. In these crystals, I'm seeing the reflections of the nebulas being created. Combustion. It's magnificent. And then Oren says, we have one more. And I call it in my book, The Hall of Events. Now, you might hear words like Akasha Records and things like that, because other people use this part as they call it Akasha Records. But in 1994, I didn't know I wrote my first book in 2000. In 1999, I started. But I didn't know what NDE was. I had no idea. I never heard of an NDE in my life. So these things I didn't know of. He brings me to what I call the Hall of Events. And now it's similar. Now, this is similar to the life review, but now different in the way is now they're not showing me my life. They're showing me all important things in life and what happened along my life path. The only thing I'm a little hung up on still is they started it with showing me I've been like in a war. In other words, now I have family that was in World War II, and I have family that was in Korea, but I was never there. I was too young for that. And in Vietnam, I just wasn't drafted because of this thing called the lottery at the time. I was very fortunate there, but I would have went, but I didn't go to war. But it showed me in the middle of war, and I can't understand why I'm there. Now I understand why. I know what it was. Okay, so now it's moving fast again. It's the same thing as that flickering screen. We're back in that flickering screen again, but now it's stopping at events. It did slow down in one part to show my birth. It slowed down and then it continued going, but we never stopped there. The time it first stopped on me was in my classroom. I forget what grade it was. It was elementary school. Something. It's 1963. I'm 11 years old. 11 years old, I forget what grade it was. The principal comes over the loudspeaker and he says, John F. Kennedy in Dallas, Texas was just shot. And the whole room went silent. With all the kids, you know how they're usually yelling and screaming in the fifth grade and stuff, if we're taking a break there because someone's about to talk. All of a sudden, everybody got silent, including the teacher. The teacher starts crying. The kids are feeling bad. I'll never forget. I remember walking home. I remember seeing my mom and a lady we had with us called Christine. She used to take care of me when I was a baby. Because my mom, she owned the bar and grill. She used to be the big cook. So she'd be up at 4 o'clock in the morning making these giant pots of food. And she'd be walking them down 4 flights of stairs to bring them in a car to bring to work every day. And Christine would come in and watch me. So she was my second mom that was helping my mom out as I was growing up. But, you know, they showed that part, and that part was so significant because that was a big, significant thing that happened in our country's time frame. And then they show me the whole time frame, the country. They show me Martin Luther King. They show me Bobby Kennedy getting killed. They stop at the end of the Vietnam War. Now, I was never there. Remember, this is not me. They're showing me the world. But they stop, and we're standing on top of the U.S. Embassy in Vietnam while that helicopter's coming down. We're watching this like it's like we're part of it. And it's just like watching a movie reel, but we're almost like you're physically part of it. So now we're moving again, and it's moving and moving and moving. It slows down again just to basically show me my death in the bed. I watch myself die, and it just speeds right up again. And now we're flickering faster and faster and faster because it's like we're moving through time almost. You're physically moving through time, and it stops us. The next stop was at 9/11, and we're standing in front of the towers. And I'll never forget this because I had friends in those buildings, and I started to run. I remember running. Like, and Oren grabbed me. Don't forget, because this is the part you can see yourself too in the sort of physical. He grabbed my arm, basically said, Bill, you can't do anything. I didn't understand any of that at this point. He said, Bill, what do you see? I said, Oren, I remember turning around speaking like I'd never spoken before. I see consciousness. I see everything. I see everything that they're thinking. He says, what do you feel? And there was all this debris flying all over the place. I said, I don't feel anything. That's when he told me it wasn't there. This is us watching what's going to happen. Now I'm all confused at this time. In my spirit, I'm a little confused still in my spirit. He said, don't worry about anything. He says, I know this will be a little confusing to you because you haven't gotten there yet. Then
So you had not even, this 9/11 hadn't even happened yet when you're.
9/11 happened. This is 1990. This is my life review.
This is in your life review of 1990.
It's showing me, it's showing me 2001. I died in 1994 when I had my near-death experience.
Right, but then you were at 9/11?
I was at 9/11. I was at now.
Oh my gosh.
This is the most important thing here is they take me from that. And I remember the last thing they showed me before this times. They show me It must have been Baghdad, because I remember when I think it was President Bush at the time when they bombed Baghdad. And I remember and the only reason why I know it was Baghdad is because the way the people were dressed, and there was bombs going off all over the city. So the way they were dressed and the way the buildings were standing, I remember that part. Then we go, and this is it. They take us to these times. I believe it's these times because we've caught up now. We're in a time of ascension where we're supposed to be on the right side of love. And there's some corrections that has to be made along the way. There's choices that have to be made. And hopefully the right choices will be made. Because they showed me two possible events. And this was horrific, the first one. The first event they take me to, and the only way I could explain this, Melissa, because I seen cities burning, I seen these forests burning like just happened. I didn't know it was Hawaii, but I saw Hawaii burning. I saw different things that just happened. And this is 40 years, almost 40 years, 30 years, 30 something years. Now, this part's important because they take me to a place that looks like, if you ever saw the movie Mad Max with Mel Gibson, the original one.
Okay.
Because I didn't see it.
I have not seen.
I saw the original one, but I didn't see the second one. But the movie Mad Max, when people would they would kill for a bottle of water. They took me to a place that showed humanity coming to that kind of development. So horrific. So bad for the human species to be like that. To actually think of life as worth nothing and just take it like that. And now they flip it on me. This part's one of the most interesting parts. They flip it on me and show me a utopia where people are living in kindness. We have the next 25 years to do this. We're in ascension of light right now. We've been in this ascension since last August. The last time we were in this ascension, it was during the Declaration of Independence. When the Declaration of Independence was signed, when George Washington became the first president of the United States, and we signed the Treaty of Paris. We were in an ascension of development at the time, which was a good thing. We're supposed to be in that ascension of development now, which is supposed to be the good thing. Our spirits and our light is supposed to be up here. We're not supposed to be thinking about here, killing and maiming it and destroying it and taking a life. Now, there's planes on the side of me. I'm looking at these planes and I'm trying to figure out what these planes are. And then I could see into them. And the planes are different segments of the way everything could turn out. It's so advanced on the other side, Melissa. You're part of everything. You're part of pure consciousness. You have 100% capability of your mind. And on top of that, your telepathy gets to a point where you could be in the midst of 10, 15, 20 people and know what everybody's saying at the same time. We're such advanced, our human being is such an advanced spirit. On the other side, it's wonderful. And that's where we're supposed to be going towards. So we're supposed to be going towards living the godly life. We're supposed to be living like God. We're supposed to show kindness. We're supposed to have love in our hearts. We're supposed to give to others that need. Now, the final part, and then if you have any questions. The final part is I'm in front with my three guardians. We're standing in front of a panel of angels. My book is called The Ninth Level of Enlightenment, The Wisdom of the Light. That's my second book, but this is the one to read because it has the whole story. I'm getting wisdom from these angels. That's amazing. What beautiful colors of light, this glowing fluorescent color. And they're completely white angels, but reflecting the whole universe. They have every color of the spectrum within them. The knowledge is amazing. The wisdom is incredible. So they're pouring these things in my mind, and I feel like I'm getting bombarded. They show me these nine principles of enlightenment. These are laws of the universe, but simplistic principles of enlightenment. They're wonderful. I remember one angel approaches me. One angel approaches me, felt like he comes to me within my spirit. And I see these number sequences falling down, falling down, falling down. Numbers and symbols just falling down straight like crystals of light, but they would light, beam up, beam up. Certain numbers would get bright, bright, bright. The ones would light, the eights would light, the threes would light, the sixes would light, the nines would light. The ones, they represented to me as God. God was one. 8 represented eternity. So it was God for eternity, which is equals 9. They explained to me everything is mathematical. The thing is so advanced. They explained to me 9 is the highest number in the universe. Of course, you could multiply with zeros. Okay, but 9, there's no other number higher than 9 itself. So the 9th number is the highest number in the universe. And you'll understand that when you get to the 1 and the 8, the core numbers, the godly eternity, the 108 is how everything is worked in the universe. And the 639, if you understand how the 639 works, you'll understand why we have tides and why we have seasons. And I can lay that all out to you, but that'll be on another time, another podcast. Okay. But these 9 principles were so important. But those numbers were important too. They told me my life path number was 3. I didn't know what a life path number was. I didn't find out till last year what a life path number was. It was 29 years later.
What's a life path
I found
number?
out what my life path number, they told me was 3. I just thought I was a 3. I didn't know what it represented. So I started to look up these numbers and find out things about them that was incredible. So these numbers have been around through the ages. The 3, 6, 3, 9 are not necessarily Tesla numbers. They've been around since early Hinduism, Buddhism. They do everything on 108 basis. Like the Buddhists wear 108 beads with their prayer beads. They recite 108 prayers. And the Hindus, they recite 108 mantras, and they have 108 steeples. And they're going, and everything in the universe basically comes to this 108. I mean, the radius of our moon is 108. If you take the distance, I'll go real quick on this because it's interesting. If you take the diameter of the sun, which is 640, I got it written down here, I think. The sun's diameter is 864,000 miles across, and divided into the 93 point something million miles from the sun, the earth is from the sun, you get 108, 0.1 point something. You get 108. It's amazing. If you take the moon, the same thing to the earth. That's the crazy part. The moon, the diameter is 2,160 miles. And you divide that by the 238,000 miles. I think it's 238,000. Yes. 233,280 miles to be exact. You divide that 2,160 into that, you get 108. Everything. Now, if the Buddhists and the Hindus knew those numbers back when the religions were created, doesn't that tell you that the universal life out there is eternity? We never die. Our souls go on forever. Now I'll tell you the end of the end here. They told me my path number was 3. My alert sign was 66. A beautiful spirit approaches me. Gorgeous spirit of light. She says, do you understand the 9 principles of enlightenment? And there's principles of choices, there's principles of intuition, there's principles of love. There's basic, simple principles. If we go by, humanity will exist at a high plane on earth. Okay. She says to me that, and I said, I understand. Yes. She said, do you understand the principle of choices? I said, I understand. Because it's our choices, it's how we develop our spirit through a process of choices that we make throughout our whole life. Do you understand intuition? I says, I understand my intuition. That's my guide speaking to me. She says, good, you have to return. I said, no, please don't send me back. I'm love. I'm light. I'm part of God. We're all part of God. We're part of God's light. I'm part of light. I said, no, I won't return. She said something that made me baffled. She said, Dad, you must return. I'm 6 of 6. My son was going to be born. That's why my wife didn't come with me to that show. My wife was in my son. My son was in my wife's belly. She was pregnant at home at that show. And he was going to be born in September. So I thought she was speaking about him. I had an older son, Joey. Now my oldest son's 48. He'll be 48 this summer. My youngest son will be 31. I never had a daughter. Well, remember that 6 of 6 is telling me my alert sign? I knew that before I died. I always saw those numbers. 66 appeared to me throughout my life at many times, and I couldn't figure out sometimes why I would see it so much at the same time. I'd be driving in the car, I look up at 66. I look down at my watch, it says 6 I look at the speedometer, I'm going 66 miles an hour. Sometimes it would appear to me over and over and over again. And they explained to me, is that my alert sign, to be aware of your alert sign. So now it's like I'm being pulled back all of a sudden. I'm in a vortex being pulled back. Nothing as pleasant as going. Nothing near it. I felt like a rag doll getting pulled back, and now I'm slammed. I remember being slammed into my body. And now I'm back in this heaviness again. I know I'm a big guy, but I'm back in pain. Now, the only thing that moved when I physically entered the body was my throat. So I took in a breath of air like I was underwater for an hour. I didn't stop the breath. It felt like the breath didn't stop. It took so long just to get air into my lungs. And now I'm laying there. I can't move. Melissa, I can't move my body. It's just laying there. It totally feels like it's paralyzed. But I could breathe. I'm breathing in and out, and my consciousness is still there. I'm saying, what happened? What happened? Why ain't I there? I was home, and I'm in my body. Now, what takes 3 minutes sometimes could feel like 15, 20 minutes. But then I started feeling tingles rushing through my legs and my limbs and my fingers and my arms. And then I had movement. And as soon as I had enough movement, I reached over to hit the phone. I hit the operator at the hotel and said, send one of my people up to take me to the hospital. And that was it. At that time, I fell off. I woke me up in the hospital. And I was number one. I didn't know what I went through. I didn't know what an NDE was. Never heard of it in my life. I wasn't about to tell the doctor what I just seen. I wasn't about to say anything like that. So I didn't mention it, but I did mention it to someone important, my doctor. And thank God I did that, because I would have never known. It would have probably drove me crazy my whole life. I probably would have never been able to speak about it. But I got home. I made an appointment to see him. By the time I was able to get in, because I was starting to get better, because I stood there for 3 extra days to start to feel better, to fly and everything. Then I got home, I made an appointment to see my doctor. My doctor said, why are you here, Bill? I said, well, it's been a while since I had so he takes me and gives me physical, takes my blood, does all that stuff. He says, you're all right. So, you could go, everything looks good. We'll take the blood work. I said, Dr. Vasquez, can I talk to you? And he says, is it personal? It was the end of the day. It was a good thing it was the end of the day. I said, yeah, it's personal and it's physical. I said, it's a little both. He says, oh, come with me. So I went with him in his office. First time I was ever in his private office. And now I'm in there looking at all his plaques, and he's just finishing something up. And I just told him the same story I just told you. And he says, Bill, I want you to sit back. I want you to relax now, because I'm going to explain to you what just happened. He said, you just told me the same story that 7 of my patients told me in the past. 7 of his patients told him the same story, a little different. You know, people, we're all individual spirits. So our difference is there. But and the main things, like the going through the tunnel, the feeling like being home, the not wanting to come back, these are in most of the NDEs. And he said to me, like he said, relax. He says, you had what they call a near-death experience. I says, well, how do you know? He says, well, come with me. So we went back into the exam room. He whips out the cardiogram, then he whips out some other machine. He must have put about 80 different plungers on me. And those are the old days when they used to take the paper out. He's reading the paper, reading the paper, reading the paper, and stopping. Reading the paper and stopping. And he looks up at me and says, Bill, when did you have your heart attack? I said, Dr. Vasquez, you know I never had a heart attack. My heart's been in perfect condition my whole life. He says, well, that was the night you died. And that was Dr. Emmanuel Vasquez down in South Florida. And, you know, it was good that I had him, because then he said to me, you know, go ahead. There's a couple of good books out there to read about it. Look into them. And he told me about this one. I read this, that first one that Danny and Brinkley wrote, Saved by the Light. And I read that one by Betty Eady. And then I read a couple of more. And then all of a sudden I start hearing the things that I said. I'm home. I'm finally home. They said the same words. They said the same words, Melissa. It was wild. This is the final part. Remember I told you I never had a daughter.
Right.
In the year 2000, on the 6th month of the 6th day, I had a baby girl. I am 6 of 6. And that's my story.
Wow. So June 6th.
June 6th.
You had a baby girl.
2002. No numbers before June the 6th.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're all part of God. We're in God's light. I have a new documentary coming out called What Every Soul Knows. That's coming out. I'm in this documentary with about 50 of us. So if people really want to learn things, and that'll be out, I believe it'll be in theaters or on Netflix or Amazon, one of the major things. They're already talking about picking it up. I don't know if they're going to do it as a movie or a series, because the producers got about 180 hours of clip.
Wow.
So he's got to either make it down to under a 3-hour movie, or, you know, so do something like that.
Now, how did they find out about your story?
Okay, my book and my story. My book is The Ninth Level of Enlightenment, The Wisdom of the Light. That's on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and you can find me on my website. It's Bill Tortorella, TORTORELLA, BillTortorella.com. That's my website. But where people can reach me easily, because I get a lot of questions from people, and I don't mind answering the questions. I always try to answer everybody. You can reach me at BillTortorella@gmail.com. And I have Facebook under Bill Tortorella and Instagram under Bill Tortorella. They can reach me there as well.
Okay. Well, I have a question.
Yes.
So I always felt like they say that you don't know, you know, when you pass away and you go to heaven, like, how will you know your family members, or will you see them again? But
that's a great question.
And then they say, oh, you'll feel all this love and all this stuff. Okay. My question is, it's kind of complicated, but I'm thinking, okay, so my mom passed away, my dad passed away. So if I see my mom or know that that's my mom, how will I even know that it's them? Because I would have had to love my mom more than I love other people. So in order to feel like the differences, like how do I even know it's her versus somebody else?
Well, remember I tell you we travel in spirit circles. You'll find here on earth that you're attached to some people, and some people you don't care if you ever associate with them at all. But the people that you're attached to is usually the people that are running in your spirit circle. And that's our real home. This is just a temporary abode. This goes by pretty quickly, but you don't know how time works up there differently than it works here. Okay, so what we think of as time, we imagine like 30, 40 years. When I just explained that to you about my near-death experience, it feels like it happened last week. When I tell that story, it feels like it happened last week. When I moved to Florida 50 years ago, that doesn't seem like it was 50 years to me. Do you ever think that way sometimes?
Yeah.
So time on the other side is a little different than it is here, but our spirits, your question is phenomenal. The way you'll know your spirit of your mom is you'll recognize her spirit. You'll recognize her physical spirit. In other words, she could have been your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle in another life. So in other words, there are incarnations that we choose to go in. Sometimes we choose to go in as families. Sometimes we choose. Now, I wasn't shown that part, but I heard that part from other people. And I can understand that now because I did feel the family situation while I was there. But they talk about making contracts, we're going to do this. It's so advanced. It's like physically incredible, and you'll recognize her spirit. So we don't understand that bodies don't exist.
Yeah.
Bodies don't exist.
They say, like, and once you're there, it's not like you were worried about what was going on here. Like this went away because in the Bible it talks about like people who pass don't talk to us. And I know that's really like people freak out to hear about that because they always feel like, oh, well, maybe my mom sent me a message or my mom was talking to me. But really, the Bible talks about that is that once we're gone, like to heaven, we're gone, right? Like we're not.
We are gone, our physical.
Right. But you're not like, you weren't looking around down here and worrying about the earthly things.
But our consciousness, our spirits never die. And it's 1,000 times better than this. We live in a capsule. These casings that we live in, I mean, sometimes we can think we're great, but it's nothing compared to the other side because you're everything on the other side. You're complete consciousness of energy. Wait till you hear this next part, with more wisdom and knowledge than you could ever imagine. The wisdom gets so strong within your being itself that you physically know things that people are thinking about. And it's so wonderful because there's no I or me on the other side. It's like we're all connected at the same time, but in a way individual. But there's no selfishness, there's no jealousness, there's no anything like that. Those feelings don't exist. But that's why we're here. It's those feelings that we have to go through in life that help our spirits grow. And the way our spirits grow is every time we do something in our life that's kind. Every time we do a service. Now, I think why I had this, I was down on people doing CPR literally hundreds and hundreds of times while I was a paramedic. I remember bringing someone back to life that I worked on for 40 minutes, and I wouldn't give up. And we finally got to the hospital. They shot his heart full of epinephrine, and I kept on working on him. And I'm doing the CPR on him, and all of a sudden I feel his heart speed up like a locomotive under my hands. And I turned around to the doctor. I said, this is in real life I'm talking now, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I feel his heart starting up under my hand, beating my hands up as I'm pushing down. I said, Doc, he's got a pulse. So he comes over and feels his femoral pulse in his leg. He says, yeah, you're doing a good job. I said, it's not me. He's got it. I says, he's back. Oh, I'm sorry. The doctor said, he's back, boys. That's what he said. I'll never forget when that doctor turned around and said that to us. So I think I was blessed in a way to be able to have that kind of conscious NDE. Because there's a lot of NDEers out there where they get the floating above the body part and they go into an abyss and they see a light, but they never get to it. Like they never get to they never get to the gateway, and that's okay. That's because most of those people you hear that a lot when you find out the people that die in the hospital, because they're right on top of you with defibrillators nowadays. There's thousands of NDEs a year. Thousands and
I
thousands and
never known
thousands.
about this.
It's
Yeah.
because of medical technology now. They bring people back. That was dead. So in other words, they die on operating tables. They die on the way to the hospital. They die at home. So
Why do you think when you say we're here to learn, right? We're here to grow, but why? Like what are we supposed to learn before we get to heaven?
I believe our spirits, like I explained before, grow through this process of choice. So as we make these right choices along our life path in life, our spirits grow during that procedure. And that's very basically my belief. You asked me, do I believe in God? If you ask that question, I say 100%. I believe in Jesus. But, I'm not going to put someone down. I believe what Jesus said one time. He said, and Jesus made a big deal out of this. If you don't believe in me, which I believe in Jesus 100%, believe in the things I do. That's the kindness, the love, and the service, and the good. So if you got a good person that's another religion, it doesn't matter in heaven. That's a couple of things that I'm 100% Christian, but there's a couple of things I'm a little on, like the incarnation part. I do believe we come back over physical times over and over. But you know how you know you're part of God? When you're over there, you're part of God. We all have God within us now. We just don't light it up. You see, some people know how to light that inner being up. We have the God spark. I call it the God spark. Okay? We have this light within us. All we have to do is reach down and touch it. And if we touch it, we gift it to others. Our gift to humanity is this kindness. And that's what we should be doing. And you'll be surprised how quick these wars would go away if people knew the right path to be on. It's interesting.
Yeah, I love it. I can't get enough of these like near-death experiences, and I watch them now all the time. But when I watched yours, I remember at the time I was, this has been I was saved when I was 11 years old, but I think throughout my life, I was closer to God during different parts of my life. And at different times I used, I guess, my free will and didn't make all the, good choices. But through this, I was at one point, I was really afraid of dying. I was it almost it was stressing me out so much because I was thinking, is this all there is to life? Well, especially when I lost my job, because I dedicated, 30 years of my life to my work. And I just felt like, is this all there is? And then I just felt like there's got to be something more. I just did all this for nothing. And I missed different things with my kids. And I started freaking out about dying. And, oh, did I just lose you?
You're listening to the See the Unseen podcast, where our number one focus is creating a little visibility for people who deserve a whole lot of spotlight. I'm your host, Melissa Georgioff, and I'm here to share some amazing stories that can transform and inspire lives. So get ready to take those blinders off and see the unseen.
Well, that's a first for us. We had a little technical difficulties with Bill. His phone died. But I was really just talking about me feeling like I was a little worried and really scared of dying. And just to finish the story up, it was just that I think some of us, as we get older, we think, time is, passing us by. And I was really kind of getting afraid of dying. I just thought there were so many things I still want to do in life, and I wanted to see my grandbabies and my kids get older. And anyway, I just had a lot more life to live. And I think sometimes stress can, and we can get, full of anxiety because we fear death. And some of these near-death experiences, especially hearing Bill's story, really resonated with me, and it really helped me to just strengthen my faith. And I just kept praying about it more and more. And, I can say I'm not afraid of dying anymore. And I think that, I think it got me excited about like what's next, for that we never really die. And that all these people who have these near-death experiences, they all talk about this love that they have, and this beautiful music, and these beautiful, the music and the colors and everything. And so I don't know if you've not checked out a near-death experience or listened to them on podcasts, I would certainly check it out. Read Bill's book as well, because I think, I haven't read his book yet, but I think that his story is really amazing. And I really appreciate him being on. I listened to his story. You can check him out on other podcasts. But it just really strengthened my faith. And so I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I know it was a little bumpy at the end. I told Bill we don't edit podcast here, so just want to keep it real. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of See the Unseen podcast. And if you did, I appreciate it if you would share it with someone else. And if you want to leave me some feedback, I encourage you to leave a message below. Hit the subscribe button if you want to receive notifications of my podcast. And if no one's told you today, you are seen, you are loved, and you are heard. And I just thank you so much for allowing me to share my podcast with you. And I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Thank you.